Hello and happy Thanksgiving from everyone here at Rising. Brianna and I will be back to bring you the latest news next week. In the meantime, enjoy this flashback from earlier this year. Senator Rand Paul has teamed up with Representative Jim Jordan to tackle government censorship online by introducing the Free Speech Protection Act, which would prohibit federal employees and contractors from using their positions to censor and otherwise attack speech that is protected by the First Amendment. Senator Paul joins us now to tell us more about this bill. Welcome back to Rising, Senator.
Thanks for having me.
So, so many people who are understandably frustrated with social media censorship, focus on what Facebook has done wrong, what Twitter has done wrong, what YouTube has done wrong, without getting at the fundamental underlying issues of how government actors pushed these choices on these companies. Why don't you tell us more about your approach?
Well, I think it's important that we examine this because we don't want to react just because we're angry. So I'm unhappy with YouTube because they took down a speech that I made on the floor of the Senate. They've taken down speeches where I've said that the masks don't have a health benefit. But I don't really have a right under the First Amendment to tell YouTube they have to show my speech. I do, however, believe that the government's interaction with YouTube or the government's interaction with Twitter can be regulated. So private entities have the ability to interview me, not interview me, edit me, not put me on there. That is a prerogative of the private entity. But I don't believe that the FBI should be meeting with Twitter and saying to Twitter, well, we'd like you to take this information down because we don't like this information. We think it's consistent with your content moderation rules. And Twitter looks at them and says, wow, that'll be a lot of work. Will you pay us? And they said, yeah, we'll give you $3 million to take down this information. And it's like, if that is not an anathema to the First Amendment, I don't know what is. And the First Amendment says Congress shall not do certain things. And so the government, the First Amendment's about preventing the government from doing things. So I think we have every right, and it's part of our role, to say to the FBI or to Department of Homeland Security, you cannot go meet with people to try to influence constitutionally protected speech. And the way I try to get people to think about this is, imagine in your newsroom that after this interview, the FBI comes in, they're armed, they don't draw their weapons, they don't threaten you, but they are armed, and they sit down with you and they say, well, we're concerned about his response to this, and we think it's disinformation, so we'd prefer that you edit that part of the interview out. Can you imagine how offended you would be, or how offended most newsrooms anywhere in the country would be? We should have the same sort of degree of offense that the FBI is sitting down in the room every week. They've been meeting every week with Facebook. And what it has led to, Zuckerberg has admitted that the FBI came to him and said, the Hunter Biden, laptop is a Russian plant and you shouldn't let it be broadcast through Facebook, so downgrade it. And he did. But it turned out it is actually true. And so we can't really let the government get into this idea of deciding what is true, what is false, what is misinformation, what is disinformation. But they're heavily invested in this. And I think the country needs to have this debate. The sad thing is the left used to be very good with the First Amendment, but now because they see people on the right they don't like and they don't like their speech, they're actually for going ahead and regulating the speech if it's speech they don't like.
So you've said in the past, pretty recently, when folks were discussing the TikTok ban, which would give Congress a lot of power over what is and what is not on the internet, and you said, I don't think we should have Americans relinquish their liberties and be coaxed by fear. We're often told that this kind of censorship is done for the purpose of national security. What would you say to those that are genuinely fearful and that this is necessary for matters of national security?
I think bad information, lies, fraud, all of this are better contradicted with more information. I think there's a great danger to letting government decide what is true or untrue. And once you allow that, it's a slippery slope to them getting involved and regulating all opinion. And it used to be not so dangerous before the advent of technology. But now with digital searching and with artificial intelligence, they can troll through millions of comments to get rid of the comments they don't like. So it's become much more pervasive with that. So, yeah, and if you look at most of the First Amendment cases, the constitutional First Amendment cases that have made it to the Supreme Court, they're really usually about despicable speech. They're usually nasty, despicable people that have said terrible things that most of us don't like and disagree with, racist, bigotry, all of this stuff. But you'll find that the court defends it because they say that part of the First Amendment is defending even things we find despicable, because it's easy to defend speech. If I say I love everybody, nobody's going to censor that. If I say I don't like certain things, speech that has to be protected is opinionated speech and frankly, sometimes unpopular speech. But, when I started speaking out about the origins of the virus and the possibility that came from the Wuhan lab, I was seen and taken down as somebody who was marketing in fringe conspiracies. We now know that the actual scientists that began the assault on this theory all believed in private that the virus did originate in the lab. So we have to be very careful about going with consensus or saying that, well, everybody believes this, so we can't let this person who's the odd one out there give his opinion. It's very dangerous for a free country.
Yeah, I did actually want to quickly get your reaction to that news we're learning that so many people involved in Proximal Origins paper now had private concerns that it very much could have been a lab leak. And obviously, they have the right to change their minds. As we're discussing, they have free speech rights. But if they misled Congress or, at the direction of Dr. Fauci misled Congress, is there going to be any consequence for that?
So Fauci meets in early February 1st, with a group of prominent virologists from around the world. In private, they all were telling him, we think it came from the lab. It looks like it's been genetically manipulated. It looks like it came from the lab. It's not a fringe theory. It's not a conspiracy theory. We think it's a most likely cause, but we think it'll be damaging to the business of science. We think it'll be damaging to the relations with China. So I bring Fauci before my committee, or he's brought before the committee, and I asked him, did you fund gain-of-function research in Wuhan? He says, absolutely, unequivocally, he never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan. Well, now we have an email from him summarizing a phone call from February 1st of 2020. He summarized the phone call by saying many people are suspicious that this came from the lab because it looks manipulated. We're particularly suspicious because we know in that lab they're doing gain-of-function research. Now, he was trying to wiggle out of this with me by saying, oh, it's not gain of function. Here we have him in private admitting that it's gain of function. He describes the research, and we have now that research in a paper, in a journal, with the grant number from the NIH. So he's dead to rights having lied to Congress. It's a felony to lie to Congress, and he should be prosecuted. I referred him to the Attorney General, but I think we have maybe perhaps the most partisan Attorney General we've had in our history, and he's not going to do anything about it. He barely even responds. I think we don't even get a response when we refer Fauci for a criminal investigation. We get nothing from them.
Back on your bill for just a second. So what is the proper mechanism to actually stop the government officials from doing what you described, from putting pressure on social media companies? Is it they're going to be fired if they do that? They're going to be fined? Is it just, well, they do that, but then there needs to be automatic, disclosure of whatever emails they're having, whatever conversations we're having? Because even Judge Doughty's decision, the decision trying to stop the federal government from doing a lot of that, does spell out some exceptions. I think the decision is a great first step. I think the exceptions he carved out do leave room for the government to still do some of the things you and I both don't like. So what is the right approach to this?
Ours forbids them with meeting with any kind of legacy or internet media to coerce, direct, collude, any kind of sort of influence to try to influence constitutionally protected speech. The reason we describe it that way is the pushback is, well, what about terrorism, or what about illegal trafficking of children and all these other things that nobody wants to see? Those are illegal, and the government's still allowed to call Facebook and say, hey, some guy's on Facebook doing this really creepy thing that shouldn't be allowed because it's illegal. That is still allowed under our bill. Ours is just constitutionally protected speech. There's a long history of the Supreme Court looking at speech. So, the whole idea that can you yell fire in a crowded movie theater? You're not allowed to. You can't go out and say, I want all of us to gather our guns and go shoot people. If that's an imminent threat, it's illegal to do that. So there's certain things that the government still will be involved with. It just won't be opinions. You're not allowed to get in there and influence opinions. And we do have them fired and fines involved. There has to be a punishment, or there's no way to stop it. Now, the interesting thing is the court case, Missouri versus Biden, that you were referring to, that just came out. The judge issued an injunction. And the interesting thing for those who say this is no big deal, nothing's happening, the Biden administration immediately canceled meetings between the FBI. The FBI was sitting down with dozens of agents every week with Facebook and with Twitter and all of these different groups. And it wasn't to say, oh, well, why don't we go after terrorism and we're afraid that ISIS is organizing. No, it was they were afraid of your opinions on vaccines, afraid of your opinions on masks. It's just extraordinary what's going on out there. And I hope we can get to some bipartisanship on this. And like I say, there used to be Democrats that cared about the First Amendment. They used to be better than Republicans. And now I have trouble finding any.
Senator, just switching gears slightly here, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell seemed to freeze during a press conference that caused a lot of questions and raised a lot of concerns for people. Later, he said he was fine afterwards. Have you talked to Senator McConnell at all after that presser?
I haven't, but I was on the floor last night. We were voting on amendments at about somewhere between 8 and 10 o'clock Eastern time, and he was there and appeared to be having conversations with people on the floor. I was busy because I was introducing an amendment and working on some projects, so I didn't get a chance to talk to him, but I didn't see anything out of the ordinary on the floor last night.
Senator Paul, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. It's an important bill.
Thank you.